Oh, I said it almost exactly on time. Hear ye, hear ye.
Draw near, give your attendance, and you shall be heard. By the state of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the court is now open. You may be seated.
Good morning, jurors. Thank you for your patience this morning. I know we brought you in late.
Let's start the day with some cap.
We brought you in a little bit late, but we've been working in an effort to sort of streamline things for you. So I do have those questions I have to ask you. Is everyone able to follow my instructions and refrain from discussing this case with anyone since we left yesterday? Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Were you also able to follow the instructions and refrain from doing any independent research or investigation into this case? Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Did anyone happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case since we left yesterday? Everyone said no or should. All right, can we have Dr. Laposata back, please? Yeah.
Doctor, I'll remind you, you're still under oath. Thank you.
Thank you. I will.
Good morning, Doctor.
Morning, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Jackson, go right ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Laposata. Nice to see you again.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Yesterday, when we last left off, we were talking about a small injury to the upper eyelid of Mr. O'Keefe. Do you recall that?
I do.
Someone help her out.
Exhibit 165 with the court's permission, please.
Okay.
I'd like you to take a look at a specific area. If I could.
Someone help the poor lady.
There we go. Right here on this exhibit. Do you see that area?
Yes, I do.
Tell us what that is.
And that is a horizontal splitting of the skin, which was caused by application of force that overcame the tissue's resistance, so the tissue split. And behind that, we see the raccoonite discoloration of the eyelid from the basilar skull fractures.
Can we have Exhibit 13, please?
Oh, man, I'm not going to make it. They need to help this lady.
I want to draw your attention to this area of the vehicle. First of all, do you recognize this photograph?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize that photograph?
I recognize it from looking at it in my materials reviewed, that it's the rear of Miss Reed's SUV.
Breathing is tough.
Take a look at the area that
I'm going to hold it together. Y'all give me 1 second.
Right about there.
Jeez.
Yes.
Could we zoom in on that area? Do you see that overhang over the window?
Yes, I do.
If I use the word spoiler, would you understand what I'm talking about? If we call that a
Yes,
spoiler?
yes, I do.
Is the laceration to Mr. O'Keefe's upper eyelid that we just looked at, is that consistent in your opinion with a strike from that area of the vehicle if that vehicle were traveling in reverse at, say, 20 plus miles per hour?
No, that rounded, thick area would not cause that skin defect in his upper eyelid.
If, in fact, a person were hit at, say, 20 plus miles an hour in the face with that rounded edge, what kind of what kind of injury would you expect to see on that person's face?
I would expect to see a ribbon of bruise that would correspond to the height of that spoiler, and it would go across the eyeball, it would hit the nose, So I would expect to see some horizontal ribbon of bruise.
Did you see anything consistent with that, with Mr. O'Keefe's injuries?
No, nothing.
Thank you. We can take that down. We talked yesterday about this phenomenon known as coup contra coup injury to the brain, correct?
Yes.
What happens to the brain after a coup contra coup, a significant coup contra coup injury?
Yes, this was quite a severe brain injury. Was injured on the back of the brain and also the front of the brain.
Guys,
Falling back and impacting the back of the head made the skull fracture radiate along the base of the brain on the right and left sides. It also radiated around on the side of the skull, and that indicates a tremendous transfer of force and energy to the skull and then to the brain, and the brain is rattled around, therefore, within the cerebral spinal fluid in the skull. So what that does is that it breaks the connections between the neurons in the brain and causes small little hemorrhages, and it causes the brain to swell. So when you get an injury, like if you get an injury on your arm, it starts to swell. The same thing happens when that injury energy is applied to the brain. The brain starts to swell. And unfortunately, the brain, when it swells, it doesn't have anywhere to go because it's encased in the skull. So what happens is that the brain and the brain stem under the brain starts to go down the opening in the base of the skull where your spinal cord goes. And that is a harbinger of death, because that means that the brain stem is getting pushed down in this hole in the skull and compressing the areas in the brain stem which control the heartbeat and breathing, and that's called brainstem herniation, and that you just die after that. So that's what happened to Mr. O'Keefe's brain.
I have a document that I'd like to approach with.
Okay. Someone help her out.
Yes.
Doctor, can you take a look at that document that I've just handed you and tell me if you recognize it?
Yes, I recognize this.
How do you recognize that document?
From looking at the autopsy photos of Mr. O'Keefe's brain.
And what portion of the brain are you looking at?
This shows a photograph looking up under the brain, and it shows a cross section of the brainstem that went down in the hole in the base of the skull, and we see there's hemorrhage in it, and those have a special name. They're called Duret hemorrhages.
How do you spell that?
D-U-R-E-T with there's a little accent somewhere there.
Caret over the E?
Yes.
Okay.
And this shows that the brainstem is going down into the hole where the spinal cord goes. It's stretching the blood vessels and causes little hemorrhage and compresses the neurons in the brainstem which control your heart rate and your respiration. It's called brainstem herniation, and that's a harbinger of immediate death.
Your Honor, with that, I would ask for the admission of the next, that document is next in order.
Oh, this is tough.
Okay. So we'll take that into evidence. Yes.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, with the redaction, may I present the...
Not yet. 1 minute. Jurors, I told you before that there were photographs that have been introduced into evidence that aren't pleasant. And you may find that these photographs are graphic. And I'm instructing you again that your verdict must not in any way be influenced by the fact that these photographs, you'll see some more today, I believe, that have already...
No, here you go.
Already been introduced into evidence. So you're not to Your verdict must not in any way be influenced by the fact that these photographs may be unpleasant or graphic. The defendant's entitled to a verdict based solely on the evidence and not one based on pity or sympathy for the deceased, which might be occasioned by the photographs. Importantly, consider the photographs only as they may draw your attention to a clinical medical status or to the nature of Mr. O'Keefe's injuries themselves. So again, these will be presented to you in the deliberation room in an envelope. But today you'll see some on the screen, and I just wanted you to know that before you see it. So now you can display it.
Your Honor, may I approach very briefly?
Yes.
If you wouldn't mind taking a look at that document.
Oh,
Is that
yes.
a redacted version or a closer-up version of just the brainstem?
Yes, this photograph shows the cross-section going this way of the brainstem with the hemorrhages caused by the brainstem going down into the foramen magnum.
With that, Your Honor, actually, I think with the court's permission, I would trade that as the next in order rather than the unredacted version.
All right, is there any objection to the switching the exhibits like that?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, and the arrows point to that on there.
So this is going to be the next exhibit?
That'll be it.
Exhibit 225, Mark.
Thank you.
This is-
The other one will be for identification, the first one.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And that'll be FFF for ID. Number F.
Okay, you can display it now.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Walt? Do you see what's displayed on the screen above your head?
Yes.
What is that?
Excuse me, that's a cross-section across the brainstem of Mr. O'Keefe, and it shows where the blue arrows I've put in there show the red areas, which are areas of bleeding, which is the sign of brainstem herniation. All the background is white material, and that's part of the appearance of neurons in the brain. So that shows that the brainstem, because of the brain swelling, pushed it down into the hole in the base of the skull where the spinal cord goes, and it pulls on the blood vessels, causing the blood vessels to break and the blood vessels to bleed, and that shows you that the brainstem has been compressed and damaged, causing death.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'm holding a green laser pointer.
Oh, thank
You could
you.
use the display to your right, so the viewers can better see it. Could you point to the areas with that laser pointer of the bleeding that you indicated causes the swelling?
Okay, so, okay. Is that going on the...
It is. It's
Okay,
probably
thank
hard
you.
for you to see.
Oh, that's okay. So this sort of roundish thing is the brainstem, and the arrows are pointing to the red areas. So there's a blood vessel that's broken there because it's been torn and pulled, with surrounding blood going into the neuronal tissue here and over here and over here. And also some of this is also bleeding, with the blood looking brown because the brain was placed in formaldehyde. So all this brown area, the red area, should not be there.
Is this type of herniation life-threatening?
It causes death. Yes, it is life-threatening.
How quickly, we can take that down. How quickly, doctor, would you expect that this could cause, let's first talk about incapacitation.
Yes.
How quickly would someone be incapacitated after they suffer a coup contra coup injury of this magnitude with the concomitant injuries that you see in the brainstem?
Well, there would be
Guys, I'm not gonna make it
two
with this.
parts to what that injury would cause the body to do. First, there would be immediate unconsciousness because of the transfer of all the energy to the brain and the massive skull fractures. So that, excuse me, so that would disrupt the normal function of the brain and produce immediate unconsciousness. Then the brain would start to swell, and within 15, 20 minutes or so, then that brainstem starts to go down the opening in the bottom of the skull, and then the blood vessels are broken, the brainstem gets compressed, and the centers in that brainstem which control the heart and the respiration then stop. So you go unconscious, brain swells,
described that
then
so
you
well.
die.
Turning to the actual, your review of the actual brain, in this instance, Mr. O'Keefe's injuries specifically, did you reach any conclusion or opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty about his incapacitation, the length of time it would take for him to become first incapacitated and ultimately to be rendered dead?
He would be immediately incapacitated with a decreased level of consciousness. Once he received that impact on the back of the head, he would not be able to make any purposeful movements. There might be some arm jerking or some seizure activity, but he would not be able to carry. He wouldn't be able to get up. He wouldn't be able to walk. He wouldn't be able to do any purposeful activity. He would be severely concussed, unconscious, not able to walk, not able to carry out purposeful activity. And then as the brain continues swelling and that brain stem gets compressed, then the heartbeat is disrupted, the breathing is disrupted, and then those heart and breathing stop. And within 15 or 20 minutes, then he could be dead.
Is that opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes, it is.
You testified concerning wound pattern recognition pretty extensively during the course of your giving your qualifications. What is a patterned injury?
A patterned injury is very basic to the training in forensic pathology and medicine because it helps us understand some change on the body, some pattern injury that corresponds to the object that made it. So we can look at an injury and say, we can figure out what made that. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But a pattern injury is very important for a forensic pathologist to recognize because it's going to really help the police investigation. Because I can say, oh, this looks like it's a wound from scissors. This looks like it's a wound from a screwdriver stab. So by identifying the pattern that object makes on the body, I can help the death investigation by helping the police say, look for some screwdriver, look for some hammer. So looking at that, identifying a pattern injury is really important it's basic to the forensic pathologist's knowledge base, and then also very important to the investigation of the crime or incident.
I'd like you to look at another photograph, an exhibit that's already been put into evidence. 160, please, with the court's permission.
Yes, jurors, this may be one of the photographs as well.
No, don't show it on YouTube.
There'll be a series.
Dr. Laposata, I want to draw your attention to the center of this photograph.
Yes.
First of all, do you recognize what's depicted here?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize?
I recognize it from reviewing the autopsy photographs of Mr. O'Keefe.
You reviewed it, informing your opinions and conclusions?
Yes.
Can you describe what's depicted in this photograph? What are we looking at?
Yes. So we're looking at the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head and an injury caused by the angular acceleration going down and hitting his head in the back. And then this is also a patterned injury. So what we see is the horizontal tear of the scalp, and we can see it's undermined a little bit. So that means the direction is going from bottom to top. Also, we see these sort of vertical lines in here and down below. So what that tells me is that the back of his head hit something that had a fine granular pattern to it to cause those individual little marks, and then also something that had a linear or ridged pattern that he went back on that broke the scalp there. So we have two parts really to this pattern injury. We have the horizontal tear of the scalp made by impact with some sort of ridged surface. And then we have these vertical scraping of the skin above and also below. They're obscured a little bit by the ruler there, which says that whatever he hit had some little like granularity to it, with each little sort of granule making those vertical marks, and then the ridged pattern having the major point of impact.
What is the significance of the pattern when you say ridged pattern? And there's two things we're looking at: the laceration or the abrasion versus the defect above and below that laceration.
Yeah. So what this injury tells me, and what I would tell the investigators, is that Mr. O'Keefe went back onto some object that had some sort of ridge to it to make that horizontal tear in the skin, but that ridge also had, it wasn't smooth. It had some little grainy grainy things sticking up on it that would make each of then these little things. And then it's the job of the police then to go back to the scene and look around for something which might fit that pattern.
We can take that down. Did you, in furtherance of your investigation, and coming to your opinions and conclusions, look at the area of 34 Fairview?
The outside, yes.
Meaning photographs?
Yes.
Did you also see photographs of any significance to you related to the garage, the interior of the garage?
Sustained. Jurors, disregard that comment, that question.
What part of the area did you see? What part of the location did you see?
Excuse me. I saw all the scene photographs taken by the police, which showed the front yard in the area where Mr. O'Keefe was found. I also saw some photographs of the inside of the house and the inside of...
So I'm going to stop you there, Dr. Laposata. Jurors, I'm striking anything after what the pictures from outside, Mr. Jackson. Move on.
Let's stay with the outside of the home. Did you see the front lawn area?
Yes, I did.
How did you? What did you note about the front lawn area?
Well, I was looking at the area where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found, because we know once he came back and slammed his head, he's not going to get up and move around.
So, yes, I'm going to strike the second part of that. Just answer the question specifically.
Okay, I'll try, Your Honor. Thank you.
Why were you interested in the outside area where his body was found?
Because then I could identify an object possibly there that would have caused the injury on the back of his head.
Did you see any such object in any of the photos that you reviewed?
No, there was nothing there. It was a flat grass surface.
Would the flat grass, let's assume that the grass was very cold and very hard. The dirt was very cold and very hard.
Here we go
falling
with the hard
backward
ground.
onto that dirt, hard or not, would that cause the patterned injury that you see, that we just saw in Exhibit 160?
No.
Why do you say that?
Because if you fall back on a flat surface, you get many times the tear you get in the scalp can be more like a star, because you've just hit one part and then the tears go in kind of a star pattern. And also because you would not have those discrete vertical scraping of the skin You would tend to, if you fell back on grass, you would tend to see, you might see grass in the wound, or you would tend to see an irregular kind of crisscross pattern of the flattened grass. And that's not what we have here on Mr. O'Keefe.
Do you have any training or experience in diagnosing hypothermia in individuals?
Oh, yes.
Have you conducted autopsies of individuals who've suffered from or died from hypothermia?
Yes, many.
How many?
100 or more, and then I've supervised my assistants who've also diagnosed the same death from decrease in body temperature.
Have you ever engaged in any death investigation, aside from the actual autopsies, death investigations in which the cause of death was deemed to be hypothermia?
Yes,
How many times would you say you've undertaken that type of investigation?
at least 100.
Have you ever reviewed any peer-reviewed medical literature associated with or discussing hypothermia and something known as Wisniewski spots?
Yes, that's in the medical literature and also in our forensic textbooks.
Did you review the medical examiner's file, Dr. Scortibello's file, as it related to, in connection with this case, you reviewed the entire file, correct?
I did.
Did you conduct a differential diagnosis as it relates to the potential for hypothermia?
Yes, I did.
Describe, before we get into your findings or your conclusions and opinions, what is inferential thinking?
Inferential thinking is another name for making a differential diagnosis. In other words, seeing a finding and then saying, how many ways can I get that finding? And then go and investigate each one of those ways and either rule them in or rule them out as being responsible to causing that finding.
Did you note whether or not the medical examiner, Dr. Scortibello, mentioned hypothermia as a potential cause of death in this case?
She did put that on the death certificate.
Along with something else?
Along with the blunt force head injury.
Do you agree with or concur with the blunt force head injury
Yes,
as a cause of death?
Yes, Mr. O'Keefe died from the blunt force head injury.
Do you concur with the diagnosis of hypothermia?
No, the body did not have any hypothermia.
Interesting.
What led you to that conclusion?
Well, when you have we know that
Wow.
normal body temperature is around 98, and we know that then at the hospital that Mr. O'Keefe's rectal temperature was around 80. So we know that his temperature went down. So there are two ways the body temperature can get down. It can get down while you're alive, or a dead body also cools when it's in a cold environment. So those are the two things you have to look at.
I'd like you to take a look. I'm
Show
sorry,
Mr.
Mayor
Bennington.
Coach.
Yep, show Mr. Bennington.
Thank you. I apologize.
Yes.
Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
This is a photograph I took from our forensic medical literature, and it shows the lining of the stomach. So the stomach is opened up, and we look at the lining of the stomach, and it shows a characteristic pattern of small ulcerations throughout the stomach, which are called medically Wisniewski's ulcers. And that allows a forensic pathologist to diagnose death from being exposed to a cold environment or death due to hypothermia. And they're caused by, as the body gets colder and colder when it's alive, the small blood vessels in the lining of the stomach, they start to break, and then they're in the acidic environment of the stomach, and you get tiny little ulcers, which then look like small dots. And that is how at post-mortem examination or autopsy, it's one of the findings I look for to see if a person died from hypothermia.
Doctor, what is gastric mucosa as it relates to the stomach lining?
The gastric mucosa, when you open up the stomach and you look at the inside, the first cells lining that inside is called the
Wisniewski's.
mucosa.
Is that
Yes,
what
sir.
we're looking at in this photograph or no?
Yes, we're looking at the mucosa with ulcerations, which are little craters that form in it due to hypothermia.
Is that exemplar of what Wisniewski spots looks like as it relates to hypothermia from a book that is, or literature that is peer-reviewed?
Oh, yes.
Is it widely accepted in the medical field?
Yes, it is.
And is it referenced by forensic pathologists and used in teaching?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of that photograph.
Okay.
Exhibit 226.
Permission to display, Your Honor?
Yes.
Is this a fair representation of what you were just looking at?
Yes.
Describe what we're looking at.
Okay, so this, I took this photograph from our forensic medical literature, and this was from a person who died due to exposure to a cold environment. And this is the stomach has been opened.
Oh, now I
and we're
wanna see
looking at
this.
the inside of the stomach. And the
Probably can't
normal
show it on
appearance
YouTube,
is
though.
kind of pinky white. That's how it should look like. And what's abnormal here is all these black dots, which are the Wisniewski's ulcers, which are diagnostic of death due to exposure to the cold. So these areas are little tiny craters, and they fill up with blood. And we see that in over 90% of the cases of people who die from exposure to the cold.
Doctor, did you also look at Mr. O'Keefe's stomach lining?
Yes, I did.
If we could have, with the court's permission, Exhibit 164 put up as well.
Okay.
Do you see the photograph on the right?
Yes.
What is that of?
This is the Mr. O'Keefe's stomach, which has been opened up, and we're looking at the inside. We see that the mucosa is a little bit red, and there's a little bit of increased blood flow here. And this is the normal pattern of the inside of the stomach. It's kind of ridged. That's called rugae. That's the normal folds inside the stomach. But there's no ulcerations here. So the diagnosis of death due to hypothermia is not appropriate in his case.
Did you see, or do you see, any classic Wisniewski spots in Mr. O'Keefe's stomach lining?
Now
or
this is
gastric mucosa?
interesting.
No.
What
Do
does
you
Dr.
observe any
Scortibello have
ulcers
to say about that?
specific to Mr. O'Keefe's stomach lining?
No, there are no ulcers. It's a normal appearance of what we would call a gross specimen when you open the stomach. At autopsy, you can see some redness of the normal lining of the stomach.
Did you, let me ask this first. Do you have an opinion as to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty based on the totality of your review and examination of the autopsy and its associated file? An opinion as to whether or not Mr. O'Keefe died of hypothermia or complications related to hypothermia?
I do have an opinion.
And what is that opinion?
He did not die of hypothermia.
And is that opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
Taking a look at the darker red areas in the stomach lining of Mr. O'Keefe on the photograph to the right,
Yes.
that's Exhibit 164, can you describe what those are? What are those darker areas?
Here we see a little bit of bleeding. The darker areas are the areas of the lining that are at the bottom of the normal rugae, because the inside surface of the stomach sort of looks like it's covered with little mountains. And so we can get the redness in between what the rugae in the stomach, and there's a little bit of increased redness here, but no ulceration.
Do you have an opinion, or were you able to form an opinion as to what the increased redness might be or is associated with?
Yes.
Sustained.
Did you note anything of significance in the rest of your examination of the file, the autopsy file, the medical examiner's file, that was related to what you see in the photograph
Leave me alone.
164?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to see your sidebar for just a minute here.
Oh,
can
that's
take
our
that down.
first sidebar. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with her from a health standpoint, but I just think she's just older. I could be wrong. Either way, this is interesting stuff because now we're going medical examiner versus medical examiner, and the cause of death was not hypothermia according to Dr. Laposata. So let me know what y'all think about that. Are we going to hear from Dr. Scortibello again? She might have something to say about that. And Dr. Scortibello was actually on the witness list for the defense. So we'll have to wait and see.